On this episode of 9 to 5 Faith, I am joined by Cristy Murray, and we're discussing the powerful integration that faith, health, and mindset all have together. Cristy is here to share her experience in neuro coaching and how it can help entrepreneurs and women overcome limiting beliefs to achieve their goals. Welcome, Cristy.
Hello, Paige. How are you doing?
So good, so good. And I love the colors of your room. It's just like so bright and shiny, and I
Thank
love
you.
it. I guess like in the cold of Alaska, you kind of want to like a little pick me up every now and then.
Yes. So this is always summer.
I love that. And like all the florals and everything. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So as you have mentioned, I live in Alaska. I juggle many hats, as most women do. I work as a nurse practitioner during the day. That's my full-time job. Another full-time job is being a mother of two. So as soon as I get off work, it's soccer games and archery and all that stuff. And I was also inspired to open up an online health coaching business because of my previous experiences, life experiences. I just want to share that and help other women so they don't go through the same thing I went through it. Even if they do, then they'll have the resources. It's actually, so it's health coaching, it's health and wellness. And now I'm adding something called neuro coaching, which is
Very interesting. What is
amazing.
that?
Yes.
What is that? I have no idea what that is.
Oh, yeah. So it's, neuro coaching is unpacking almost everything. So the thoughts that come to your brain. So like if something happens, and what's the first thought that comes to you, right? So it's either why are you panicking or how you take things. And so our brains actually repeat, it goes into automation. So if you keep thinking the same thoughts over and over again, then when the similar things happen, it's just like it doesn't even think anymore. That's the thought that fires. So a lot of women actually go through this, shame and guilt and, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I can't do that. Or I don't have value. I don't have anything to offer. And it creates limiting beliefs for us. So we can't get to our goals. And even if we do, we're struggling. We can't willpower ourselves to getting certain goals. And especially for business owners, especially online, it's difficult with the juggling and all these moving pieces. And you just keep thinking, why am I not getting there? Am I not motivated enough? I'm not good enough. So it usually goes deeper than that. Usually either something that happened in childhood, something you heard, something that's said, something that's done. And you don't know it until you go through this process. So really, we create spaces for you to unpack your thoughts. And then we kind of nitpick through it and see, okay, what's serving you and what's not serving you. And once we identify what's not serving you, then it's time to reframe that and rewire that. And then we do the whole brain priming, create new neural pathways, and before you know it, the same thing happens, and you're like, "Nope, I'm bulletproof now." Doesn't happen.
Go. It sounds very similar to like the trauma approach to like EMDR, where like a lot of people don't know like our neural pathways kind of get stuck in like a little bit of a broken record pattern, and so like we need to complete the neural pathway, which is what EMDR helps facilitate, I guess, in like completing that neural pathway. And so it can like actually finish that loop, and it's not like glitching all the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It sounds similar. Maybe different methods, but similar goals.
But that's really fascinating. And I think that's so interesting and so important too. I think when we're able to talk about what thoughts are in our head with other people, like in a non-judgmental way, you realize that like not everyone thinks like you.
Yes.
Like you're like, oh, you're not freaking out about this. This is just me. And you're like, yeah, like this is just you. Or like, no, like that's not typical. It might be normal for you, but also like that's not kind of the universal, typical that you might find. So I love things like that. And I also really love that you have the many hats on because as entrepreneurs, we very frequently do. And I want to talk about a little bit of like your decision making in having your full-time job and also starting up this like health coaching practice, because a lot of the time I sit back and for me, I never really like I'm not going to take action thinking of this, but I'm like, what if I didn't? Like, what if I didn't? Like, what if I didn't do this podcast? Like, what if I wasn't writing my books or doing my course? Like, what if I did? And what would my life be? And how would it be different? So I think it's so funny because like there's something so inherent and like something so like core and foundational to ourselves that like we have this like yearning and kind of need to fulfill this. So can you talk to me a little bit about like that journey of like, okay, you started becoming a nurse practitioner and then you're still doing that, but you also wanted to kind of go off on your own.
Yeah, so I have two kids now. The oldest one is 15. And so before we had kids, I actually, my story is I went through infertility.
Hmm.
So 3 years of infertility, and I didn't have medical experience then. Well,
Okay.
I did. I was a medic in the army, but that was the most I know. So I knew if something wasn't right, and I had the drive to look for resources and advocate for myself.
Yeah.
It was difficult back then. So we're talking about 18 years ago. I'm dating
Yeah.
myself now, but so back then it was more of a taboo, like, oh, you can't have kids, something's wrong with you. What did you do
Yeah.
wrong? You're being punished because you don't deserve kids.
Right. Right.
The internet was slow back then, and you still had to go to the library and do your own research and
Yeah.
and print everything. Um, and it was hard to find a support group. So it was more of a label of shame and hiding. And then
Mm,
so well, I was hiding and being ashamed of not being of getting pregnant while everyone else who doesn't even want kids are popping out kids. It
yeah.
seemed like um they kind of you go through certain things that you don't wish on anyone.
Yeah.
You don't wish on your no matter how much you dislike someone, you really would not want to wish that.
Yeah.
And so I was just starting to think that, and of course I was praying that I go through this, and we did get through it eventually. So now we have two kids, but it was something that, like you had mentioned the word yearning, I just yearn to help women and I don't want them to go through that.
Mm,
And of course it's out of our control, but if they do go through it, then there's resources, and they just know that they're not alone and it's not their fault, and then they shouldn't be ashamed of it.
yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. So that's kind of why you decided to like go off on your own and kind of create this coaching program of helping women and like walking alongside them. Because also I think there's a lot of benefit because like if I were in your shoes, my cynic would be like, okay, people don't have to go to the library anymore. They can just like look it up online. But also, they have everything online and you don't know what's what. And it's hard to kind of weed through everything. And so I think like that would be the really great opportunity that you're able to kind of provide for these women of like, hey, here's like either custom information for your specific situation or here is like something that I've kind of dwindled down and I've done the footwork for you in being able to do all this research and kind of come to this conclusion for you. So I think that would be insanely helpful, especially during like a tough time.
Hmm. Yeah, and what I provide with the health coaching is the support that you don't get in your provider's office. So
Yeah.
we see our providers and we get the test and we get diagnosed, and then when you leave that area, at least for me back then, I was like, okay, now what? They tell me this, this, and this. So what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And now that I know what women go through that journey, then I know they need the nutrition support. I know they need
Mhm.
to change their lifestyle if it's not if it's not what's optimal for trying to
Yeah.
get pregnant, and like down to what kind of foods they eat and just everything to get their bodies ready, because it's really ultimately you can get you can get told, you can be told what to do and what medicine to take. If your body's not ready and optimized for it, that's
Yeah.
the physical part. It's not going to work as well. And
Yeah.
then the other portion of it is our faith and our minds. You could be doing all the right things, but
Yeah.
if your stress level is really high and
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, if you're stressed out and your cortisol goes up, guess what? Like, the other things are not firing off in the way that they need to be.
yeah, that organic meal is, I mean, it's good meal.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I actually resonate with this topic a lot. So I have I don't even think I've ever talked about it on the podcast before, but I have PCOS. And me and my husband, we're not trying to conceive right now, but if one day that ever does happen, like infertility is nearly like a given or a guarantee when you have PCOS. And so, I hear a lot of what you're saying, and I'm like, yes, like 100%, yes, because kind of what you're doing and walking alongside people, kind of optimizing their lifestyle and their habits and behaviors. I'm trying to do that work right now so that when and if we ever want kids, I'm not having to deal with like the stress of kids and then changing my entire like lifestyle on top of it. My lifestyle is already good, and then we can focus on the kids.
Yes, so you're already a step ahead because
Yes, but it took me years. It also took me years. So I don't want anyone listening to this and be like, oh, you're already ahead. No, it took me around 8 different doctors to go to. And oh, so many tests and just out the wazoo, and so much blood work. And I finally found a functional doctor who, I mean, she's an hour away from me. She's an hour drive from me. And I make that drive for her because she has been the only one who has been able to not only correctly diagnose me, like you were saying, but also give me the other lifestyle and medication and like supplementary support alongside a lot of it.
wow, yeah, it's amazing. Actually, so September, we're at the end of September, and it's PCOS Awareness Month, and I actually went live in my group and talked about PCOS.
Yes.
Hours
Love
ago.
it. I love it. Yeah. And like, I mean, I don't I don't necessarily like broadcast it because to me, I'm just like, it's not an identifier for me. Like I know for a lot of people, like their illnesses and whatever diseases that they have, like it's their identifier for them, and like, more power to them. And that's their decision. But like for me, like PCOS, it's just like I totally forgot it was like PCOS month or whatever. But like it's not an identifier for me. For me, it's just like, yep, that's just something that I deal with on a daily basis. But like especially when you're trying to conceive, and especially bringing in like partners with it and going through that, it brings it a lot more to the forefront, where I could see it would be a lot more difficult to kind of have those thoughts be like super like separated when you're like really immersed in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with you that it's not an identifier. That's why I'm actually shifting from the infertility health coaching to more of the neuro coaching space.
Hmm.
Because, like you said, I don't really want to identify as, oh, I'm the infertility lady. I went through it. I know, and I'm really
Yeah.
good person to help someone going through that.
Yeah.
Um, but so now the business is shifting towards more the neuro coaching and more faith based, because
Hmm.
really that should be everyone's ultimate goal, if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah. So talk more about that. Talk more about like the integration of our faith and our bodies and our brains, and like how those three things kind of work together, or can work in opposition when it comes to our health and living an optimal life.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say my business name is Blue Veil Wellness, and the blue veil is because the Virgin Mary wears the blue veil. So
Hmm.
that's like how the foundation of my business.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so it's really rooted in faith. And so we had talked about how stress and how women really advocate for themselves and do all this research, but we tend to especially a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of high achieving women, they tend to take everything on their shoulders. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can do this. All I need to do is work harder. And so more is not better. One. So the harder you work, I mean, you have to really look at how are you efficient or are you just spinning your wheels? And
Yeah.
spinning your wheels is really taxing your body. You're burning yourself out. So we talk about the cortisol. And then so that's one part of it. And as we work hard, we tend to forget to take care of ourselves. And
Yeah.
like sleep is one of those things that, like, women, I'm just going to generalize.
Yeah. Go for it.
Women are like, okay, I can survive on this many hours of sleep. And then in the morning, I can work more or I can do
Yeah.
more. So I can excel and I can move forward. And we really have to believe that there's a higher power and that there is a
Mm-hmm.
purpose to what we do. And in neuro coaching, we call it the 7 whys. So like you dig down to like, why do you want to do this? And why? So
Yeah.
then eventually you get down to the core meaning that because, like
Right.
for me, because I don't want anyone else to go through that. And I want the
Right.
generation to be healed and mothers to be a better version of themselves so they can have better relationships and, not
Yeah.
just kids for because they're obligated to, but really enjoy their life. And really, it's a lot of praying, a lot of discerning, and a lot of trusting. And you
Yeah.
have to really just know that, yes, this is hard, but is this what you're meant to do? Because if you know you're meant to do it and you have the faith to keep going, you can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really resonates with me as an entrepreneur and like I mean, I don't even consider myself that, but like really brass tacks, that's what I am. But I was talking with my like go-to designer gal who was helping me with some like, visual and creative assets. And at the end of like one of our calls for a project, she goes, "Hey, I'm proud of you for outsourcing this part of your business." Like she said that to me, probably not those exact words, but I was like, oh, no one's really ever told me that before. And that's a beautiful thing. And I'm like, we need to be telling people that more often. Because I'm like, it's just graphics and design work. Like, it's not anything like huge or crazy, but like it's something that I don't have to spend my wheels doing. And so like her just saying that gave me this like little reminder where I was like, oh yeah, like I don't have to do everything. And like it was her showing the gratitude for something that I did for myself um, in that moment. That was really beautiful. And so, yeah, I definitely see like people kind of overwhelming. And I also like, I have a close group of like women who are also on the like book writing journey. And I just told them, I'm like, outsource everything you can where financially available, give it to other people to do.
Mhm.
And I really struggle with that a lot because I'm like, can I do it? Yeah. Should
Mhm.
I be doing it?
Yes.
That's a different question.
Yes, and if you look at a team, everyone has their own specialty. So my kids play soccer and they each have their own positions.
Yeah,
So if the defense decides, oh, I'm not going to do this because I can do all those positions,
nothing gets done.
nothing gets done, and then
Yeah, and then they lose.
and he's tired, and then they lose, and then it's like,
Yeah,
well, you didn't defend your position, you didn't stay where you're supposed to be. That's your specialty, that's your post.
yeah,
And
yeah,
everything will be more efficient and effective if people like stay within their specialty.
yeah. So, how does your faith come into play when you're talking to various clients, and like when you're kind of like in this business building mode, obviously you integrate your faith with what you do. But is that something that you just do, or do you really encourage your clients to kind of push that as well for themselves?
I do encourage it. It's the part of it. It's not just like, hey, let's get your body healthy and then let's get your mind. But I don't just stop there. Eventually, I will ask them like, okay, what are your beliefs? And it's
Yeah.
going to come out that if they just keep holding on to something, then eventually we're going to start talking about, okay, there's a higher power.
Yeah.
And do you go to church? What do you believe in?
Yeah.
And what do you do for a sense of community in your faith?
Yeah. I think I just posted on my Instagram this week. I had this moment, this epiphany. I was in the Chick-fil-A drive-through line that is always 20 cars deep. Why? I don't know. It was literally like 2:30 in the afternoon, and it was 20 cars deep. I was like, man, Chick-fil-A. Anyways, and I had this epiphany, and I was thinking, because one of the courses that I'm creating, it kind of falls in like this personal development sector. But at the end of the day, I was thinking of it and I was like, no amount of things that I create, no amount of health development, gym going, healthy eating, rituals, doctors, like no amount of that is ever going to supplement or fulfill what only Jesus can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that, like, in our culture, I feel like we try to kind of pack on all the other things, like resisting Jesus, like, oh, like I will go get my palm read, but I'm not going to believe in Jesus. Like, oh, I'm going to go to like I was going to say an orgy. That's not what I meant. I was going to say Ouija. Anyways, like a seance, but I'm not going to believe in Jesus. I'm going to, kill myself at the gym, but I'm not going to believe in Jesus. Because we're reaching for all of these things and all of these healings when really, like, you will never be completely healed unless you have Jesus.
Yes, it's Jesus is the ultimate healer. I mean, he died
Yeah.
on a cross for us, whether we deserved it or not. He saved
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, not to say like that those other things aren't important and those other things are not, critical. Like I still go to the gym, I still eat healthy and see my doctor and all that stuff. But I have a sense of this culture, especially in like, I mean, it's almost October and we're talking about like new age and occult and like all of that in this world. And I'm like, you just get this sense that people are really reaching for the next kind of healing in their life. And really like, you just have to like sit back and be like, no, it's like the big man upstairs and, nothing else.
It really is. I mean, one of my favorite sayings is Jesus take the wheel. Like
Yes.
when things get harder, you feel like you've done everything that you can, and you're like, all right. I mean, you can't just keep holding on to it and, oh, I'm going to fix this. I'm smart and I'm strong and I can do this. It's like, really, that's the time to lift it up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, like there's the, stereotype that, Christians have it all together just because they have Jesus, and that's also not the case. But what we do have is a different way of coping with the hard things. We still go through hard things, but we have a different way of coping with them. And that is because we have Jesus and we have hope that you are not able to have without belief in God.
Yeah, there's another thing too. If you want to go to the extremes, I know there are some people that just keep preaching faith. Oh, let's pray for it, but then they won't do anything. Oh,
Yes.
let's just pray. It's like
Yes.
you gotta do the work too, because Jesus helps those who help themselves.
Yes, Cristy, I love that you went there. Yes. And also like faith without works is dead, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that's also not to say like it is through grace alone that we are saved. But if we're not willing to do anything with it, then it's not really reflective of our actual true faith.
Yes, and it's true faith is works and belief. It's like I know like a lot of people kind of say, oh, there's those Christians talking about Jesus again. But it's and I can kind of see their point because there's a lot of people who preach, but then don't have they don't have Jesus living within them. So the
Yeah.
works are not there. They're not living that life that they should. So they're talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, just like kind of bringing it full circle, I think that there needs to be more like professing Christians who are kind of doing the work that you're doing, where it's yes, and it's these other things. So like, yes, like you can heal your body, you can fix these issues that you're having, and there's also faith in Jesus. It's having both things and holding both things at the same time. I think like Christians need to be a lot better about that, especially when it comes to pointing people towards Jesus.
Yeah, I agree. And really, like, we all preach self-care, but part of self-care is having your one-on-one time with Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like part of it too, in my opinion, is like pouring out what you're getting filled up in. And I feel like a lot of people are pouring out into the wrong things or into things that are not good. Let's just put it that way. They're pouring into things that aren't good. And like they're like, why do I feel so empty? Well, because you're not pouring and you're not getting filled up by the life sustaining source.
Yes. It's like just reaching for junk food
Yeah.
as opposed to the
Yes.
real life-sustaining food, the protein and like the real meal that's really
Yes.
going to give you the nutrients for you to stay healthy.
Yes. Well, and it might be satisfying. Man, this is like a really great analogy because, like, it might be satisfying. Like, junk food is satisfying in the moment. Is it nourishing? Probably not. Is it, satiating? In the moment, it is, but it's not going to carry you through. It's not going to give you the sustenance and the nutrition that you need unless you go to kind of the health, like the good, healthy source, which in this extended metaphor for those listening is Jesus. Unless you go to the source of the actual nutrients that we need, you're going to always come up empty.
Yeah, I agree. And you're going to come up empty. Eventually, you're going to crash and you'll feel
Yeah,
worse.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. I always laugh because sometimes I'll see something and I'm like, man, when I was a kid, I just thought when I'd be an adult, I could just drink all the soda I could ever want and like have all like I have the money and the function to go to the store and buy whatever food and junk food I want. Do I? No. And it's such a funny, like, mental shift when you're like, oh, I could do that, but I don't do that because I have matured enough to realize that that's not necessarily what is best for me. But also, like, we can do that with our faith. It's a maturing element of we realize, like, hey, maybe this junk food is not the best for me. Maybe I should reach for something else.
Yeah, I agree. And then like, so with that too, the maturing and then environment is part of it as well.
Say
So
more.
like, shifting your environment. So there's a saying that you tell me who your friends and I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah.
So if you're in a group of people who, oh, I believe in this, but I don't believe in Jesus, and you're kind of just there to just, I shouldn't say save face, but try to get along and not
Hmm.
really ministering and not being not proclaiming
Right.
Jesus and who you are, it really, I mean, it plays a number on you.
Yeah.
And I really noticed it because I went to a women's retreat. My church put up a women's retreat. It's just 3-day one, and it's amazing. It's really like talk about like buffet for the soul. It's really
Yeah.
like we are all like filled up with,
Yeah.
it was just amazing. And I just noticed like, these are the people I want to be around.
Yeah.
I mean, they fill my soul, and like we built good relationships, and it really, I got more of a sense of direction on
Yeah.
what I need to do after. And it's really, it's amazing. Like if you or any of the listeners have a chance to go to a church retreat, go for it. It's
Do it.
really, it's
Yes.
it's amazing. It's
I
nourishing.
I always joke around. I'm like every time because we have like a women's retreat, but then we also have man camp, which is what they call like the men's retreat. It's called man camp because it's manly. It's literally at the same place. But I always joke around. I'm like, my church, like after they send the folks on this retreat, when they come back, like the week after they come back, they should always have like one big like campaign fund generating thing like, hey, we need all these volunteers and we need more money to build this building and all this stuff, guys. I'm like, they come off a huge high and they need to take advantage of it.
Oh
But
yeah. Capitalize on
yeah, exactly. Make good with what you just created. But yeah, I think there's something huge to be said, like about um, the accountability and just
community.
the community and just like there's like this soulfulness that
Mhm.
comes from real, true biblical community. And it's unlike anything that you can really describe, but it is really so beautiful. Um, and so yes, like I also echo that of like if you're not in a community, you should find one. A church is a great place to start because it provides a way of getting filled up in a way that like is just not comparable to any other relationships that you have.
Yeah, and so like environment, we're talking about it. It's the parable of the mustard seed, right?
Yeah.
So the seed like fell on good soil, and then there's some seeds that fell on the road, and the birds just went up and ate them, and the seeds just fell on, what was that other area? Like
Like
thorns,
thorns. Yeah.
weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because of that, they didn't grow.
Yeah.
So like us, we have to go where the soil is good, so we grow in
Yeah.
faith.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. And I think like just, spoiler alert, whenever this is coming out, that's why. So one of the big projects I've been working on is a program called Be a Better Person. And it is literally how to develop so the soft skills that you need to develop those kinds of communities. And the first one will be a better friend. So it is literally telling you how to be a good friend to those around you. So I'll probably drop a link in the show notes below for people who want to learn how to be better friends. And then also, if you have crappy friends, yes, I say crappy. If you have crappy friends, be passive aggressive and send this to them. That's
There
an
you go.
option too.
I love
I don't know
it.
if I should be advocating for passive aggressiveness, but there have been times in my life where I have wanted to gift something like this to people around me. So there we go.
There you go. That's great. I love it.
Yes, our environment is so important, and what we are surrounded in is as equally important. And so I could like put myself in the mind of the audience listening right now, and they're like, okay, Cristy and Paige, that's great, but that's a lot. So, Miss Cristy, what is one thing people can do to kind of start? Like if they're like, okay, environment, getting filled up, self-care, community, like all of these things that we just talked about, can we dwindle that down to kind of like one core thing that like someone listening can be like, okay, I can do that. That is attainable for me today.
So as soon as you wake up in the morning, just find a quiet time, and that would be your time with Jesus.
Hmm.
That's a good way to start your day. Center yourself, call it self-care. You're doing it the first thing, and that would be a good start to your day.
Yeah. Is that what you do?
That's
First
what I
thing in
do.
the day? I love
Yeah.
that. I think that is uh it is more common than people talk about, is starting it first thing in the morning, is starting that time with Jesus.
I reach for my rosary as soon as my alarm goes off, and I have that time like buffered in before I actually get ready for work. And what I'm finding is, okay, I start praying it and I start to fall asleep because I'm still in bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm like, okay, alarm's going off. I get up and go to the other room where I have a setup there. So the house is quiet, and it's really it's nice. I have my own buckwheat pillow seat, and then I just sit there and face the altar and I do my prayer. And I was like, well, this is amazing.
Oh, I love it. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And yeah, I've had to implement certain things like that so I don't fall back asleep and so I'm not like lazy. One gal I had on the podcast, she said that like even before her feet hit the floor, she's praying. Like she does not allow herself to get out of bed, even to use the bathroom before she prays for the day.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm using that. And I have, and it's great where I'm like, I really have to use the bathroom first thing in the morning. But here, let me pray first, and then I can go use the bathroom.
That's good too. You can start that way. And in the
Yeah.
summertime in Alaska, I was like, gosh, what am I gonna do? So I make it to my walk before going to work and then
Mm,
finish a rosary. So I decided, okay, as soon as I wake up, I'm gonna put my clothes on, go outside, and say the rosary while I'm walking.
there you go. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, Cristy, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or Blue Veil? Where can they connect with you online or learn more?
Yeah, so they can go to my website. It's
Wellness,
blueveilwellness.com.
sorry. Blue Veil Wellness.
Or I have a free gift. It's called Ways to Reinvent You. So that's like 8 little blurbs on, they can choose whatever they want to start implementing so they can start to be on their journey for self-healing.
I love that. And all those links will also be below in the show notes. Cristy, thank you so much for joining me and talking about all the things health and wellness and environment and community and how
Jesus.
our health goes in Jesus. Yes, of course. But of course, the Jesus. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of 9 to 5 Faith. Don't forget to subscribe, leave 5 stars, and go leave Cristy some love too at all the links below. And we will catch you guys next week on another episode.